So I was very excited when I got the invitation to make a book, an exhibition on Boekie Woekie here at the Center for Book Arts in New York, because I know Boekie Woekie since a long time, and I find it's unparalleled. I never saw such a bookshop in my life. It is in fact exactly this what Robert Fillou said. It is a work of art which makes life much more interesting than art. And by the way, Robert Fillou, he shared a studio with you in Düsseldorf. So there are connections. And why is Boekie Woekie unique is for many reasons. First of all, there are their books. It is also why they are functioning, and their bookshop itself. I will speak a little bit about these three aspects of Boekie Woekie. Their books were the reason, in fact, why they started Boekie Woekie in '86 in a very tiny space of 5 square meters, 2.50 meters to 2.50 meters, also to show their own presence in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. They're young, you came from Germany, you came from another city, Runa from Iceland, and there were also Peter Magnusson from Iceland.
There was no Amsterdam.
Yeah, no one came from Amsterdam. Kees Visser came from the Netherlands, but not from Amsterdam, and he was also spending a lot of time in Iceland. So this was also to show their own presence. And but the story started before. They had the opportunity in the Foundation Kunsthaus Amsterdam, where the private founders offered a space with offset machines. And they offered also a freedom, I think what nobody else would have given you, to make experimentations with offset prints. And one can say they subverted really the script of offset printing. And Barbara Moore, you described very nicely in Art Forum how this exactly functions with paper plates, with transparencies, without plates even. So this brought life to something, prints which are normally more impersonal, very perfect, very precise by the photomechanic means. They gave, these experiments gave a distinct character to these prints and books, of course, which have a physical presence, an energy, one can say. They are not really, we just spoke about it, they are not really crafted, that are not bibliophile crafted books. They are done with the aim to multiply. But they are also not these conceptual books we know from Ed Rocher, and everybody has in his head a little bit trash look, not at all. And they are also nothing in between. They're really unique, unparalleled, and have very, very, some books, some, not all of them, huh? Because they work in a very different way. But some have really, each page is different from another, and so the print itself becomes a means of storytelling. Very tactile, and shifting colors, shifting textures. And at the end, it's also very poetic, very witty, very, very human, profoundly human, I must say, what we see in these books, what they tell in these books. And I told now a little bit about the experiments which mainly Jan did, but Hetty, for example, Henriëtte, did other print techniques also, experimented with other print techniques. perhaps you would, and Runa too.
You printed with the sun.
Yeah, yeah.
The shadow.
Yeah.
And the sun was bleaching. She cut in the books, and then when the sun would be there for a month on it, then under it would be the picture. She called it sunsets.
Yeah. You see one of these books there. She also stamped, and with the stamps on the prints, she printed, then also made experiments with offset printing. And you did something special also, no? The etchings, in fact, you are a master of etching, can one say this?
I worked a lot with etchings, and I used old plates with stains, and when I saw certain pictures in those stains, I was printing them and colored them in, and from the same plate I made very different, with different colors, they became all different.
Yeah, one of a kind.
In the show.
Yeah, these are the books, why Boekie Woekie exists. But the functioning of Boekie Woekie is also unparalleled. They have a radical open submission policy. This means they don't select the books which they take in their shop. They don't make a quality control or something else. You said once, who are we that we would decide what is a book of art or an artist's book, and not, And so they want to show.
You could enlarge that without going too far. If you want to call good or bad, to call things good or bad art. I mean, if you want to keep it a bit limited, but really also beyond art. I mean, to call good and bad apart as if they are distinctly, always under all circumstances, good or bad, is a misleading approach to finding a way in life which can bring you to end at which you are a little bit wiser. I mean, if you sort out the good from the bad, if you make that your guideline, or so, if you have quality marks according to which something has to be good, or if it does not fit, is bad. Well, I mean, okay. Then you are suddenly soon lost.
Soon stopped. Stuck.
I mean, the thing is that we take the whole, all of it, to be exclusive, to form parties which support the idea that something is good or something is bad. I mean, if we are not ready to accept the full range of everything which can be as something which we want to include in our lives, we are, I mean, at least, I mean, it becomes a little bit doubtful.
One can see in it also the concept of alles, everything, of Dieter Roth. He had the Zeitschrift for alles, the magazine for everything.
That's certainly a moment where this becomes something. Yes,
and he accepted really all things which were given to him for this Zeitschrift. He had to give it up after a while because it became too much. But anyway, there are a lot of numbers. I don't know how many. I don't know. 10 or
And the last one is a thing like this. It's more than a telephone book.
Yeah.
Well, also if you're approaching this historically, things that look bad to one generation are simply so far ahead of their time that people don't understand them, and they eventually become the things that we realize are important.
Right.
And also, and Dieter did make a statement about preferring quantity over quality.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
Yeah, he prefers quantity over quality, that's so, yeah. But it is also in your shop, it is everything than a wide gallery. You have a density of books and zines and prints and postcards at the pavement, which invite also people who are not coming normally to galleries, who don't make a hushed reverence, oh, this is whatever, a whole gallery. They are invited to come in, and I experience it myself, they do come in. And then, they get around with other visitors, with those who are there, Jan, Hetty, or Runa, and this is to linger, and they share their not only their knowledge, their ideas, their thoughts. If you stay longer, they share their food and their beer and everything. It's really what I said, Robert, to you. A work of art. They call it a sculpture in progress, which is more interesting than art. Yeah. This is one of the shop, and the third thing would be, and there we can perhaps then also start a discussion, the radical independence which Boekie Woekie kept for almost 40 years now. And this means to them they don't demand fundings from outside. They do all their financial, but also their organizational structure is autonomous. One can say really autonomous. So they don't have to stick to a concept of 30 pages, which where the government or the city said yes to. No, they can do really the things which are important to them, and I think this is the third quality which I appreciate a lot. And perhaps here we can start the discussion. We already spoke before now a little bit about having a shop, or having fundings, or having both. So I think there you have to speak or can tell a lot about this idea. Jan, perhaps.
Okay. I came to the Netherlands in 74. I began to come to the Netherlands in 71 from Germany, and I got to know in Amsterdam a place, and the guy who ran it, a Mexican, a Mexican writer who had turned onto conceptual art only recently. He was a bit new in that field, but he had a lot of stamina, and he had started a bookstore. I think, Maike just said it was a few months before that Printed Matter here on this side of the ocean started with their thing. So in those years, I had my first books, and I realized that I could go with my books to the store, and nice guy, sort of changed, so it was an interesting place, and quite fantastic. I couldn't really believe that one could actually be in this real world and have a shop and so. Outrageous, really crazy to bring so much reality into your life. Found it fantastic, but then it occurred to me that this was a strange thing. There came a plan. This guy, Ulysses Carrion was his name. He had the idea for an exhibition, and he was seeing a chance where to carry it out, namely in a small town in the north of the Netherlands. His plan was to show a diamond on a socle with a lamp above the diamond, so that the diamond would reflect the colors nicely. And the idea was that one visitor would be let into that otherwise darkened room at a time, and the others would have to queue up. If there were others, they had to wait until that guy would have come out again. And with a sort of this thing here, this gesture with his finger on his eyelid, let's see how long it takes until the diamond has disappeared.
Stone.
Stone would be stone. But he did not have a diamond. He did not own a diamond. He would have to get a diamond from somewhere. So it occurred to him, and there again it was with this gesture, but without any real resistance, he succeeded. He went to the city officials, not even the country, on a lower level of art subsidy. He knocked on the door and said, I plan to buy a diamond in order to see how long it takes until it will be stolen. Can you give me 5,000 guilders? It's only a small diamond, does not have to be a big diamond. So he got 5,000 guilders, and the show took place, and the diamond was stolen in due course. And this guy from Germany, I never saw the show, but I just heard the story. I could not believe it. I could not believe that the officials would have that sort of gummiband built into them that they could play with public money to see how long it would take until it would be stolen. And okay, so there was this.
What year was it?
This was in the late 70s. This was 78.
But Amsterdam was different than when you came. You came in the late 80s. At that time, one said Amsterdam was the freest city of the world. They had very, very policies, very, very open, and there were a movement. There were a lot of movements for drug freedom, for sexual freedom, for many, many things were going on. And
Squatters.
Squatters.
When I visited,
Yes.
I was taken on a tour.
Yeah. So it was another time where perhaps also the policies were perhaps a little bit more open for you to visit.
You would certainly not. You would not pull this off now.
No.
But there was this discussion. To what extent is this a good system? And do we really? At least those who profited from it were, of course, rather convinced that this was a good thing. In my eyes, it remained rather a doubtful thing. I could never become. I'm born in Germany in '45. At the end of April '45, I am with one little toe stuck in a time which, for Germans, where the state had made itself such an impossible organization of failure and deceit that yeah, I mean, I think it's because of that. I'm not going to cooperate with the state. I mean, this is an instance in which I am not functioning. I can't do that. And I mean, okay, the Dutch state is another number, and all this is all can be seen as relative. But what matters is that, I mean, you want to be an artist in your life, and you go into this world, you have to, I mean, you have to have your privacy, you have to go into your ivory tower, and you have to have the level on which you are on an exchange with others, and you need to see what you think up in your ivory tower, whether that makes sense in the discussion with others. So that discussion can only come from others who have an interest in what, I mean, for whom that what you come with could be relevant. I don't think that a city or country representative who can set his name under that you can get some money onto your bank account. I mean, that is not a way of starting a discussion. I mean, that is a way of bridging time into the future in which things have gone so and so, and later you can maybe in retrospect find something to exchange about it. But it is not a direct way of finding out in how far your imagination and your thinking have brought you to some practical something. I mean, something which can function in this world. And there, I think, a place where a person who in the first instance is not necessarily really involved, but he gets a chance to pick up on some material, get some sort of feeling for what it is there, and maybe feels some of them do. I mean, our experience is that 10 people come into the shop and 1 or 2 buy something, but the rest, it stays meaningless, or they maybe never come again, or maybe, okay, whatever. So there is this, at least a ground tone of possible meaningful exchange, and yeah, okay. I mean, that is what we would have to do it for. I mean, we test. We have to. I mean, as an artist, you have to test in reality, and that is by the side of the street. The reality is somewhere where others are. I mean, we make the reality together to test what comes out of what you have been cooking up by letting giving others a chance to find it interesting, and so yeah, you can also call it a permanent performance. Also, we have been sitting there performing the small scale business people for 40 years, but yeah, okay. I mean, we pay sales tax, and we write a receipt for the customers who need one, and that's why it all functions along the forms of a shop, really, yes.
Really shop,
Yeah. But it is in our eyes, it is, yeah, working on that walkable sculpture in progress you mentioned.
And maybe interesting that we pay the rent with selling the postcards.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
we have been now we've been selling postcards. I mean, prints, our postcards and prints. I mean, what artists usually call prints, but rather small. Yeah, we have been paying that. We have been paying our rent with postcards. Yes.
There is one question I would have, and then I would like to ask Barbara Moore about the relationship to Boekie Woekie. We New York and Amsterdam, in fact. But one question, there is a text in the catalog, the headline is, it's a practice of stealth. Do I pronounce it right, stealth? Huh? So, and is it like that? There is one quotation also, which I picked up one in a conversation. We put our heads out of the window, but inwards. Because to survive in this way is, you have to have a certain resistance and a certain will to do it. But how? And is it stealth, or is it because you are not hiding somewhere? Not at all, and you are presenting your books at book fairs and in museums and so on, in collections. So
it's a heck of a lively world. And we were super lucky. And when we Ulysses Carrion and Printed Matter in its first years sort of were on the wave of the conceptual art, which was going unhindered throughout the 70s. And for conceptual artists, the book had been quite clearly a very meaningful and useful vehicle for their ideas. But at the moment where the museum people decided that this conceptual nonsense had to be over, that new expressionism was needed with dripping oil paint and stuff, from the 80s on at least, books really became at the best sales catalogs. And that sort of lowering of the book to at the best to a practical level. I mean, the idea of that the book is possibly an object in itself, a special thing in itself, was for quite a while actually forgotten or put into the back. Only, in my theory at least, it is the Netherlands that played in what you have as your Reagan years. Here in America, probably one could sort of parallel it to that. We had in the Netherlands a certain Mr. Lubos, whose favorite pastime it was to close down art schools and join graphic design and free art into one school. The government wanted to reduce the number of the people who would later come and bang on the doors to say we need support. I mean, they wanted to reduce those unhappy creatures who call themselves artists. That led, and parallel to it, with the development of the computer, the home office, that thing that everybody has a printing machine at home and so on, different from before, with carbon paper on the typewriter and so on, and so a different quality sort of entered. The free art students and graphic design students and the owners of computers, and then little step further with the internet suddenly there, where you could publish something which would be read in Australia without that a publisher would have had an opportunity to pull out that letter which says, sorry, your manuscript does not fit into our fonts, here you have it back. So I mean, you were free suddenly to publish, and you had the means to do it. And so I mean, yeah, and I mean, yeah, since then I mean, hell is loose in the world, you know it, but yeah, it's just, I mean, New York with the New York Art Book Fair is the worldwide main spot in it. Yeah, I mean, okay, maybe some other spots similar, but there is, in Europe there is no city anymore which does not have yearly 1 or 2 artist book fairs, and so there has grown overnight a new branch on the art tree, and it's the first time a tree with a branch which you don't immediately see how corrupt it is.
When we started, there was this museum director who said, "Don't you realize books are out?"
Yeah, we have that as a
Also,
yes, we have that as an anecdote.
Yeah.
in
You
86.
resisted. And in '99, you invited them to New York. Before there was Monika Strauss. This was a few years before.
87. It was
Yeah,
about
very-
a decade.
Yeah,
It was
it's
about
true.
a decade.
It was very
Yeah.
early that she invited
87
you.
or 88.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
true.
this Monica, I
Yeah.
think, was 89.
89.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, it was about a
Yeah,
decade
yeah, yeah.
before I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And perhaps
It's in my article. What's
Yeah.
the date that's in my article was verified.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah. And why did you come to invite just Boekie Woekie?
Well, it was part of a larger program, because what my bookstore stood for was a part of a lineage, you might say, of the history of artist books. And interestingly enough, you mentioned just now that the Center for Book Arts started in 1974. So that was even before the things I'm talking about, printed matter, Franklin Furnace, and
Yeah, that's
things like that.
unbelievable.
And so if we take that chronology, when the Center for Book Arts started, I can't say that they were in reaction to something else, because they had a very definite mandate for certain kinds of work, which was really, I believe, about the craft of bookmaking. And so even though they were different from some of these things that came later, and they've all sort of come together, you might say, with exhibitions like this, there obviously was something in the air about books,
Yeah.
period, whatever kind they were going to be. And that has to do also with the conceptual art, is that although it became so much of an intellectual thing rather than about the format, by, I think, necessity, a lot of it took the form of printed matter to get the ideas across, because it wasn't so much about the formal
It
art
was not-
making
yeah.
in terms of painting or sculpture. And though they all start to bleed in together with minimalism, I mean, these things are all connected in one way or another. So anyway, 76, though, for me, was, I see as a pivotal year here. The Center for Book Arts has already been in existence, but in 1976, printed matter and Franklin Furnace both opened, and since printed, and Franklin Furnace was not they were a nonprofit, and printed matter started out as profit-making. United States government funding started with New York State under Rockefeller in 1965, and a few years later came the National Endowment, the first government entity was the New York State Council on the Arts. So printed matter even had trouble getting their nonprofit status in the beginning, because the government said, well, you're a bookstore. You know, and you sell books. Anyway, So when printed matter started, it was already in the air. That's the only way I can describe it. There was this feeling that something was happening. When you look, if you were in the arts, now I come to a certain extent as an outsider, in the sense that I'm not myself an artist. And I didn't even go into being a book dealer by intention. And I won't get into how that happened, but the fact that a bookstore was needed for certain kinds of things, well, printed matter was doing all this wonderful new stuff that was coming out and making a venue for disseminating what was going on. And so immediately became apparent that there was a history leading up to this. And so my first bookstore, Backworks, was a profit-making, I put very much in quotes. It was not funded in any way, very independent, and I'll get into that in a minute. But it was a way of treating the history of what led up to what artists were producing concurrently in the mid-1970s. And there was a long history, of course. It went back to all kinds of things like Dada and Surrealism, but there were other dealers that dealt with that kind of work. Robert Motherwell's Dada Painters and Poets, I think, came out in maybe the early 1950s, 51, maybe a little earlier. And so we were just beginning to understand that there's always a time lag. And so you sort of began to understand that work in relation to what you were doing when you were doing it. And so in that sense, there were already starting to be prominent dealers in Dada and Surrealism in the United States. Just very critical, because what came next, what became between that and printed matter? And that was what my first bookshop wanted to specialize in. We saw there was a need to get that work out to the public. It was people like Dieter Roth and a lot of things that happened in the late 50s starting and feeding into this continuity. So anyway, so I have to bring into these things, particularly since you're talking about your independence. I said that my various bookshops were never nonprofits in the legal sense, but they were often nonprofits in the reality sense. But in the beginning, it was easy. You have to go back. Inflation in the United States didn't start until 1977. And also, when you look at real estate in New York, this is what has happened to it. My first bookshop in '76 cost nothing in rent because it was in the home of my business partner, okay? And my next one, Bound and Unbound, when I went into the Starrett Lehigh building, which is that incredible landmark building on 26th Street on the river. Remember, everybody in this audience practically is too young to remember when there was nothing past 9th Avenue except a falling apart waterfront that had been, where all our shipping had gone to places like Baltimore. And you didn't usually want, unless you had certain particular desires, you didn't walk past 9th Avenue at night in Chelsea. And so the Starrett Lehigh building was in this barren landscape. There was no park there at all. And this is a landmark building. If you don't know it by name, you've seen it, look at it, because to me, it was a piece of architecture that was such a pleasure to go in to work every day. I have to tell you the influence of architecture on your environment. And the 1931 building. And my rent there, just, you're all sitting down, was $7 a square foot a year. Okay? So it didn't take a huge amount to make a profit. And I liked being independent, because one thing about government funding, not your kind of European government funding, which seems to have a little bit of flexibility, like you say about the diamond thing, but American government funding means you have to plan years in advance and come up with a very specific project and then wait and see if you get the funding. And if you're independent, you are much more nimble, and you can, I was able, you could say, we have an idea for a show, and we could do it within a couple months, and we'd self-publish a catalog on newsprint or something very cheap. So you could run a business relatively economically, and you weren't constantly worrying about the rent, because as I said, the first time it was free, and then later on it was so cheap. And when I left the Start Lehigh building I closed the bookshop in 2004, but I left the Start Lehigh building fully in 2007, my rent was $40 a square foot. And at that time, people like Hugo Boss and Martha Stewart were going in there, and it's now one of the most expensive buildings in New York City. I'm sure it's over $100 a square foot. It was going up easily to $70, $80 a square foot. See, that whole economic situation in New York is a huge impediment, and that was really the reason why I had to close my bookshop. I couldn't sustain it anymore. Maybe I could have sustained it going into the super valuable limited editions.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that, which brings me back to why I gave a show to Boekie Woekie. To me, they were simply an important part of this history. I think that's the simplest way to say it. I had visited your store, it must have been in 1990.
Yeah, or a bit after.
But, so that was afterwards, yeah.
That
How
was
did, we met at one of the New York printed matter art book fairs.
Yeah.
That was what it was. I was in all those early ones before the one that got so big now. Anyway, I was just interested in everything that was going on, and I knew Ulysses, and I would always see him the few times I was in Europe, and he came over here at least once, and we spent a lot of time together. And just
I think she visited Michael Gibbs together.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, I come out of another part of, as I mentioned to you earlier, I have had roles in documenting, you might say, or helping to give historical relevance to several things. In the late in the early 1960s, things started to, I just feel so privileged that I was there at a time when in art so many incredible things were happening with performance and with printed matter and books. I worked with my husband, Peter Moore, who was a photographer of performance. I was the information person for his performance photographs. And as I was telling my colleagues here before, when something is new, you don't know who the people are. All the names are new. So it's this, and I'm sure even with you, the people you meet, it's your self-education.
Yes.
You learn, you get acquainted with other artists, with other people doing similar kinds of work or similar kinds of things you're
Or it's hearsay,
interested in.
you hear somebody has done something somewhere.
Yes, and suddenly you go there and, oh, it's a whole new thing, and you learn that person's name, but you didn't know their name when you saw that performance the first time. And so I was collecting all kinds of programs and ephemera as my self-education to what I was witnessing. And that actually led to my becoming the book dealer, because by the mid-70s, I was one of the few people in this part of the world who knew what all those printed documents were, whether it was Judson Dance Theater or Fluxus, and all of these groups also fed into printed material. I just have always seen it as a big picture of a way of thinking that started at a certain moment in history, with links to what had come before, quite often in opposition to what had come before. And that's...
But I asked myself, you said once, I don't know when, we were always very, very well welcomed in New York and the States. And then my question would be, were it also the books which you saw which were attractive to you, or just the history of Boekie Woekie that it should have
No,
become
they were part of
and why?
the whole picture for me. I mean, I happen to like them particularly, and I like them as people, but I mean, I'm very fond of them. But, well, okay, that's another thing. The thing that I miss about my bookstore, which, as I said, I closed in 2004, is the people.
At least I believe, because I see at your place too.
And that links into what you were talking about.
Yeah.
I used to serve coffee, and my bookstore was called Bound and Unbound, and I considered bound, unbound, and ground the coffee components. And luckily, also when I was in the Stair and Lehigh building, when I started there in 1996, and it was this wasteland, and so the galleries, there was already there was Soho, but that was the main gallery place, and galleries were open Tuesday to Saturday. So there were no galleries. Paula Cooper came in not 68, that was in Soho. She came within a year or two of when I had my bookstore in Chelsea. And I think there was one other gallery that came at one point. So we had to make hours that would attract people, because everybody was going down to Soho. There was no art scene in Chelsea yet. And so we'd be open on the weekend. It was like, I think my schedule was like Wednesday to Sunday or something like that. And so most people would come Sunday because they weren't in Soho on Saturday. I mean, they would be in Soho on Saturdays, Sunday free. And we could sit and we could talk about the material, and I could serve coffee. And, you know, yeah, it was wonderful.
But that's the same in your shop.
Yeah.
I see people are coming and speaking and speaking and speaking, conversation, and then a beer, or Hetty comes with wonderful food and talks and conversations. Yes.
Yeah, and that is the
About
part,
books.
that is a great part of what it is. Yeah.
No, I mean, if it is not, I mean, if you are not used to close a day off with a few $1,000 in your till, you better have a good time spending those hours in which you won't earn all that much or so. I mean those people who earn a lot of money on a daily basis and can trust that it will be the same tomorrow, I mean, maybe they have a good reason to not sit with their friends all the time and talk about things and compare notes and so. I mean, they must earn their money, but we don't have to earn our money. We can sit around and talk about it.
And one has to say, you are open from Sunday to Sunday or Saturday
Yeah.
evening.
Wow.
Sunday morning to
Yeah.
Saturday
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah.
In this 48 years, there is never a holiday or something. You keep
That's
on.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, you know, some of my most memorable times were when students came in, because
Yeah.
I was carrying material that they were not studying in school yet. Now, all these things, whether it's performance art or fluxus happenings, concrete poetry, artist books, whatever it is, there's, starting really, I guess, in the 80s, there was there were inklings of some college courses, but really not very much. And I used to love it when students came in and actually were interested and discovered something. And this, unlike you, because you're on the street level, you know, and I was upstairs, and it wasn't just anybody off the street. Had to be a destination. But I still have people coming up to me on the street who are now well on in age, who say that they miss my shop and that it was always so nice to go there, and they'll mention something. In fact, just recently at Pepe Giallo, I was having dinner and a guy at the next table, who I didn't recognize him or anything, he said, "Oh, I bought a poster at your shop, an Yvonne Rainer poster at your shop, and I still have it." And it's like, and he paid for my dinner. When it came time to pay, the bill was taken care of.
But I hope you don't have to close soon, because now the third venue of that shop is in their own house, and not your own, but in a house where you live. And perhaps you can go on, and contrary to the rents in New York, perhaps you can still go on with your shop a long time, yeah, with help of Christiane and Vera and who
We are planning, of course, we're planning, and then we have our Bert Brecht in the back of our head. We plan a lot, and nothing much has to come of it. But we would hope, and we try to push a little bit in the direction of that the shop can continue. Yes.
Yeah, would be nice.
And that would of course be great. But whether that turns out to be a realistic thing, I don't know.
But the word continue brings me now to continue perhaps with you. Perhaps you have questions or remarks or comments, whatever you would like to.
So, point of reference, and I have a question. Originally, books were scrolls, and the Chinese then decided to make butterfly wings. That's what the original name of books were. And I think of books as kind of like butterflies that come out of a book. And so, Jan, I'm wondering about your relationship to images and words.
Yeah. but I mean, you can turn the butterfly around. I made a sort of multiple with a book a long time ago, where the book is turned around and the cover is towards the sky, so to say. That, I mean, it's pretty functions pretty well as a tent and as a roof at least. And so, I mean, books can be rolled and like the book is a very versatile thing. Yes,
And fresh wind.
Yeah.
You see
there are some sort of remarks in the exhibition on what books can be held and
would be nice to have butterflies in the exhibition, which you can open. There they are in the vitrines, and
Something I'm thinking about.
that's a little bit a pity, but this is the dilemma of artist books exhibitions.
In Jan's relationship to words and images, because he's also an image maker.
Of course,
yeah.
totally. Perhaps. I think that's.
I mean, I mean, books as containers of all sorts of stuff.
At the opening, somebody.
We use now. We play books. We don't. We try to. We have sort of adopted a terminology where we don't speak of book making anymore so much. It's so to serious and so. I mean, you really are going. We play books. We say we live in the age. We are the first people who live in an age where books can be. I mean, are not necessarily connected to utmost seriosity anymore, but they can be sort of lighted and maybe butterflyishly fluttering by.
Fluttering. Is there another comment, question, remark? Yeah.
So this is both for Jan and Henriëtte. Can you talk a little bit about how you operated the living sculpture, but you also sustained your artistic and creative life? How did you balance that? Can you talk a little bit about spending time or finding time to both produce the work and sit in the shop and entertain and these sorts of things? Because that's a really big part of it, right? I mean, the work itself.
Rather much, of course, yes, but when the best ideas, which I later think I had a good idea, so that happened when I was on the bicycle waiting for the green light at the traffic light or so. The danger is that I forget it before I'm somewhere where I can note it down. I mean, what is work? Work is, of course, spending time at achieving a set task or so. But for an artist, work is often that sort of rather undefined moment in which the muse kisses you or so. And they don't kiss you 24 hours a day usually, and so I mean, it is. I mean, what is work? I mean, I don't know quite what work is. I mean, work is what you think you have to do or so, yeah. But then, I mean, the important things are not really there now. I mean, that's what you have to do, you can also do tomorrow, I mean, or at least better have done yesterday, of course, but to have that triumphant feeling of having an idea. I have to see. Oh, okay, that. Yeah, I would say that is work, but I mean, it's not even an activity. I mean, I don't know what it is. Having a stroke of luck.
And looking at the pictures of everyday life, and seeing something else in it.
Sort of inventions or something.
But I think it's interesting that, like, for those of us who live in New York or in a system where like work and like free time and is very, I mean, it's also in Amsterdam, but there is definitely what you were talking about before, like big cultural difference between, you know, like the amount of time you dedicate to your work, to commuting, to and how to understand or find time for those administrative tasks that happen within within a bookshop, management and so on, and time to print and to produce and to, even if you don't set it to yourself as a task. Like there's still limited amount of time in the day and limited amount of energy.
A lot of things have to happen, and a lot of things happen just luckily or so. I mean,
But printing, you have to do, huh?
yeah,
It's not just the
and,
news,
yeah,
which
okay.
is kissing
I mean,
you.
Boekie Woekie, after, we were told we would have to, if we wanted to continue in that shop, out of which we now moved a year and a half ago, if we wanted to continue there, we would have had to carve up every month 5 times the rent which we were covering. That was simply, that couldn't be done. And okay, what now? And so we ended up with giving up our printery. We had this offset printery in our house where we had lived since '83, and there was a sort of a basement with 2 offset machines and small ones, but everything needed for doing our stuff.
Many books here were printed, eh?
Yeah. So okay. I mean, this was a bitter pill to swallow. They went as scrap iron. I mean, difficult to get out of this. I asked you how you got that guillotine into here, but I mean, and this stuff out which was there before. So I mean, we faced that also. I mean, we had to. I mean, we were with a sledgehammer working on 2 offset machines. I mean, crazy and totally ridiculous. And now there is in this place with for us a lot of history, but of course for those people who come now and no history at all, there is now a bookstore. The space is now a bookstore. And okay.
Without
We have we sort of comforted ourselves by saying that we had tried out whatever misbehavior, so to say, you can try out on an offset machine. And there wasn't much more we could think of what would be an interesting challenge to still do, but okay. I mean, I would have rather kept it, but then I mean it's a relief also. We don't have to print so much anymore.
And there's always
Now we print the online. We upload files. We get parcels back, and so not the same thing.
Go on. Or is there somebody else? Anybody else want to put?
I'd like to have a footnote to this conversation in the sense that I might have read this or not remember it right, but Hetty once told me this story how they acquired the house they live in. You went to the fish market, right?
Yes.
Can you tell that story as a footnote to the circle events in your life?
We wanted to find a place to live, we wanted to buy something. But
Be a bit more illustrative. This is a group of people which can hear a strong story. We
Oh,
lived,
but
we lived,
she
in,
told
we
very
lived in a
nicely.
small apartment in a part of town in Amsterdam, poor part of town of Amsterdam, where the rent was 100 guilders, which would equal something like $50, and 60 square meters. With a toilet, and here comes the strong part, I mean, those who find this disgusting, just close their ears. There was from the apartment down through our apartment and down further down, the shit pipe was broken, and the shit from the girl upstairs came down on the outside of our shit pipe. Just to illustrate the seriousness of finding another place, and we needed another place. Our mothers were absolutely unhappy with how we lived.
Your mothers.
If I remember right, you went to the and bought fish.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we
This
were
is
always
the
looking at advertisements.
Yeah.
In those days, for those who don't know, when you went and bought fish, it was wrapped in newspaper.
Yeah, but when it was not fish, it was asparagus, by the way.
Okay. I'm from Iceland, I always think fish.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyhow, for his birthday, I was going to make asparagus, and they were wrapped in a newspaper, and we had been looking for buying a house since many months, but we didn't find anything. And as an old
Buying a house means in the Netherlands buying an apartment. I mean, we did not set out, we had not set out to buy a whole house. It was, a whole house seemed to be totally out of the reach. But that was offered.
Yeah, but what did you
Small-
see in the newspaper?
because we were so used to always look for something. Is there something where we can live? And then
Yeah,
I took this newspaper, and as an old habit, I was looking for the houses, and then there was all of a sudden there was a small monument, and so we said let's have a look, and then that's how we found
And
where we
that-
live now.
Yeah. And at that time, it was not this chic
It
area
wasn't,
near Central
It's only
Station.
junks around.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the police
just
did was.
as a footnote to the history of Boekie Woekie, I think this is a very nice story.
Yes, it is.
I have a question for Skuda, actually. What year was WPA? Did they start?
WPA?
Yeah, the bookstore.
I don't know.
1975. 1975.
1979.
75.
75.
Yeah, I
So
think, I
that
think it was a
started
year
before
before Printed Matter. Yeah.
And they had a bookstore?
Yes, I believe so.
And
the
the
bookstore,
Very small
that
presence.
was, I took over the bookstore. So I came to the bookstore then in '83,
Yeah.
and then the bookstore had existed for 1 year or so.
I'm sorry?
And then it had existed for 1 year, the bookstore.
Okay, but the actual bookstore opened in 75, you're saying?
My
The-
understanding is Washington Project City Arts started in 1975. Right?
Okay, that's what I didn't think it was before printed.
And I don't know.
The bookstore was, to the best of my knowledge, I was the second manager to the bookstore, so.
You think 79?
No,
I'm sorry, I'm not
80,
hearing that
83.
wrong. Hmm?
I think it was opened up in 82 or 81.
The bookstore.
Yeah, it was opened by Donald Russell, who
Don
worked,
Russell, yeah, I
who
remember.
worked
Yeah.
with me at Visit to this workshop. He and Helen, his wife, they started working at Boston Project for the Arts in 81, 82. He started the bookstore
Okay, right, so
And
the
then-
organization
and then
existed
he
before
brought
the
me
bookstore, that makes sense, yeah.
on a special visa, having knowledge that nobody else had. That was very important for the United States of America to be hired.
That was 82 or 83.
Hmm?
82 or 83 you came in.
So I would have 83. And
Is it still existing as a bookstore?
Hmm?
Is it still existing as a bookstore?
The Boston Project for Art has been off and on, so I don't know whether it's on now.
Well, WPA became part of the corporate.
I think, yeah,
In
so
Washington.
I don't know whether the bookstore there is considered part of WPA or not. They were trying to resurrect the bookstore, but
Robin can tell me that.
it's a hard thing to do. May it rest in peace.
My daughter, Robin,
Yeah.
what took over, period, and before they closed it.
When was my exhibition there?
Hmm?
When was my exhibition there?
Ah, so that must have been 85,
Before
86.
Boekie Woekie?
Yeah, I think it was before.
I mean, I can check that.
85, huh?
I think 85.
I think it makes sense.
86, yeah.